Alrighty, then let's go over to another B&R update today, as always, together with Samuel. And
Hi, everyone.
as last time, we have Crimelune and Nicolas, or Flavian and Nicolas. Welcome back.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having us, as usual.
Yes, appreciate that you came in again. I would say that we will jump right in with the first change, which is a ban for Invert Polarity. And this is a card that we have previously talked about, I think in a latest session. By the way, just to mention that today, if we have any cards that are not featured and that you would like to have an opinion on, just check the latest 2 editions at which we talked with Flavian and Nicolas. We talked about a bunch of cards last time. So if you're missing something, Nadu, Parallax Wave, whatsoever, and you want to hear an opinion of either of them, then just go back to that edition and you will have what you're searching for. So back to Invert Polarity, a card that is legal for almost a year now, I think.
11 months, yeah.
11 months, exactly. We talked about it last time. Question is, where does the sudden change of heart come from? So we had, I think we had this debate in general about cards with randomized aspects, such as Maddening Hex. There was Cosmic Stellar Pup, I think, right? The Planeswalker? Comet Stellar Pup. Yeah, right. And now there's this. Our opinion, so Samuel, my opinion was quite straightforward on that from the beginning. Very toxic interaction. I would have personally liked to see it go earlier. Finally, that's the case. What was the reason for the final decision? Maybe we will start with Nicolas. Yeah.
About Invert Polarity, that's a card that we talk about a lot about, and there is a lot different opinions about the card because of all community, mostly about the other country, not fans community, and people say that okay, that card can be banned, but it's not something that we must to do right now. It was not pressure about that, and it's not a card that makes core of a deck. It was a card that is played in some deck because you can play it, but it was a card, blue-red card, so there's not a card that we will see. We saw a lot of play, and so there is no pressure about time to ban it. But we talk about and we think that the format is better without this card in this format. We don't want to play. We don't want to run our games and to about dice rolls. So we prefer to ban it right now. But we had a lot of discussion about it, and it was just the good time because for the previous ban list we work about some more core problem or about some command zone problem or something like this, and right now the format feels really great for us, and we say that so because the format it's okay for us and it's good right now, we can change some things to the merge of the format, like some small things, small improvement in the format, and I think that's a good way to ban Invert Polarity.
Interesting. So are there other cards that you think should be banned, but there's no pressure to ban them, so you don't? And I feel like that's like in my subjective brain, I think that's a bit of a weird attitude to have. Like why have a card? Why not ban a card if there is agreement about banning the card?
There was no agreement about the banning about Invert Polarity. Some people say that yeah, we can ban it, and it's the thing that there is some people that was agree about the ban, and some other people will not want to ban the card. And
I think I also think that it's not always about banning at any time. What I mean is, in my personal opinion at least, we need to, when we ban something, we like to have some kind of coherence, some kind of logic behind it. And sometimes it can give wrong signals. I have an example in mind. When we choose to ban Reanimate, we were discussing at the same time if we could let what's the name again? The 3 mana reanimation creature, white one. Thanks,
Loyal
retainers.
yeah.
And we were thinking about, is retainer still needed on the ban list, or can we let him go? And my point of view was that if we want to nerf on one hand Reanimator by banning one of the most powerful tools, it could be quite strange to unban at the same time a card that functionally is helping the same archetype. And so sometimes it's more about coherence inside the announcement and what we want to achieve, more than the individual power level of cards. And so, in my strict opinion, actually, indeed, in my personal opinion, I like to have some kind of logic behind it. So let's say we need to buff this archetype, or we need to nerf this archetype, etc., etc. And at some points, it does happen that we have no consensus, and suddenly a consensus is achieved, and the card can go, even if we have no specific orientation behind it.
Yeah,
I think polarity is in this case. Sorry. Oh, sorry, my bad. Just so polarity, in my opinion, is in this case. We had a lot of debate, and at some point we were just like, okay, so are we actually all okay for that? So let's do it. It does not cost anything. And the main point is, it's not really a card that breaks most of the balance of the archetypes. It's just a card that promotes bad gameplay experience. Sorry, you were saying?
No, I just wanted to say that sometimes people forget that it's also a political thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like,
that's my point.
Sometimes you don't come to an agreement because different players or different core members look at the cards from a different perspective. I remember last time, Nicolas, you told us, I think you were mostly influenced by the power of the card looking at other formats, specifically Modern. So it's not good enough to be a valid counterspell in Modern and in other formats. And therefore, your estimation was rather that it's not the craziest card and we probably don't have to look at it. Now that might have changed. Just to give you like a bit of an insight on how things can change, and sometimes it's also if you haven't played that much against it, or maybe you haven't had the chance to test it yourself in a given deck. Now, for example, Samuel played Loot in the latest tournament in Strasbourg, and I think you had like 3 or 4 things that we had on cam where you played Invert Polarity, and the outcome was absolutely hilarious. So I think we're both happy that this card is gone. It's completely random, and usually we always kept these things away from Duel Commander. So I think it's a good way or a good decision that this one is finally gone too.
Yeah, but Felix, that's not what I said last time. In fact, I said that the card was cut in 2 halves, and the first half was unplayable because it was cancelled and was a really bad card. But the other half, if you win the dice rolls, was that you win the game. And I said that the card was really not interesting for the format. So
okay, maybe I've recalled that the wrong way. Okay, yeah.
I did not want to defend the card last time, but my English is a bit poor, so
no, it's fine. Then maybe it was my bad. Okay, let's go over to another card. So those are the bans for today. We head over to the first unban. That's what people most likely wish for. It's Zurgo Bellstriker. Samuel, you want to introduce us on that one?
Yeah, I think we talked about it last time as well, because Zurgo is probably the most obvious card that kind of pops out at you when you think, okay, why is this card still banned? It was banned back in the 25 life days, and there have been quite a few CMC 1-2 power red creatures printed since then. We were in agreement last time that it's better than the other ones that are around, than Norin and Kellen are the ones that pop into my head right now. I don't know if there's more. But yeah. So what changed? Well, yeah. What has led to the decision now? Is there not enough red deck wins at tournaments or winning tournaments, or what change? What do you hope to achieve with this change?
But with Kellan and Norin, we saw that a one drop in mono red aggro was not so much big things, that something that we, us and people in general, are afraid about, that if one drop, if a mono red can play one drop in command zone, it will be broken. And when Norin goes out, people was very afraid about this and thought that mono red will be the best deck of the format. And after some 5 months or 6 months, we saw that mono red is not great right now. It's tier 2, tier 3 deck, right? Actually. And so we talk about something. It's that the strength, the force of playing, when you play monocolor, there is a problem because you don't have access of a lot of cards. You can play only the red card and the card of the color and the uncolored one. And but besides that, when you play a monocolor deck, you can have access to swap. And it's something interesting in the format that, for example, if Ophelia, mono white deck plays Isamaru and Talia, and sometimes Loran too. Like mono black decks could play Shield Duet and swap into rack against the white matchup. And so it's also interesting to mono red to have a swap. So with Zurgo, he could swap against green deck or deck which would play dark or we play a small creature, and I think it's something interesting. And also we talked that with Zurgo that can up the mono red deck, and they can play maybe Zurgo on the game one, or they could play also still Feldon or Kellan, and that brings choice to the mono red player, and we think that's something interesting for the format.
Don't you think that deck building wise, Zurgo, like from what I've seen so far, the deck structure of a CMC2 command zone versus a CMC1 command zone is very different. Because whenever you switch to Feldon, you usually want to have your one drop, the creature. That's why the density of one drops is very high in comparison to you have one of the best one drops in your command zone already. So the mana curve is much better structured, because up to CMC5 or whatever you want to include, there's nothing in between. So it's an interesting point here that you say the swap is actually a relevant thing for Zurgo. I mean, it's an option. It's always an option. It's a cool thing with the monocolored decks. I personally think lately there wasn't that much use for it because Felia will most likely never swap to something else unless you're playing against Storm and you want to have Talia. But then again, many decks don't play Talia anymore because outside of that interaction, it's not really good. Mono Black, Sheoldred has a very strict build around. I played against Sheoldred in a tournament with Felia. and they decided to swap for Turok, and then they lost the game because they had so many cards that synergized with Sheoldred, but not with Turok. Turok was just there, a protection from white creature. But yeah, interesting idea. Would be cool to
And,
see some hybrid builds that can occupy both commanders. That would be cool.
But right now, also people who play Kellan play a lot of drop 1. Also because Mono Red want the build that is played mostly online. That's a build with also 12 Kellan plus 12 drop 1. Because to play Mono Red, you need to go on the Su. You want to go under the other deck, and you need to put pressure, and you need to drop 1, 2 drop 1. That's the thing that people want to do because the drop 2 are not great, and so with this core of the deck that is played right now, you can swap in Feldon with Kellan, and also people swap with Inti also. That is something I saw online sometimes against notably against dog decks like Grist or Slimefoot. So I think Zurgo will be another
Option?
another bow to his arc. I don't.
Charging battery.
Another string.
Another string to this bow.
I don't even know if the idiom exists in English.
I don't think it does.
Another tool in the toolbox.
Another tool in the toolbox.
Yeah, bro.
Don't know what adding bowstrings to a bow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a French expression. It's an idiom. You had a string to your bow. It means you have more options in your toolbox.
Okay, interesting. Do you like shoot with 2 different bowstrings, depending on the situation?
It's a good question. I didn't. I'm not really a good archer, so.
Let's move over to the next one, maybe.
Just
You
one
want to
more
add
comment
something?
about
Sure.
Zurgo.
Yeah.
The best, the worst fear we have about Zurgo is the second point of endurance may actually be useful for Zurgo, in the sense that we had this problem about a few creatures like Thrasios, for example, have the possibility to trade and to win trades when you attack them with creatures like a 2/1, like Norin or Kellan. And so it may be that the second life point of the creature may offer the option to bypass this kind of trades, and so to give an edge to mono red against this kind of decks. It could be a good or a bad thing. It's quite hard to anticipate, but it's something we have in mind, and we'll monitor this specific point very closely. It may be that it's just a detail, and in the end, in the grand scheme of things, it does not change anything to the structure of the matchups. But it may also be a good point, in the sense that it helps mono red having a bit more good matchups against some kind of decks, and especially combo decks, which rely on this kind of defensive strategies. But, well, we'll see what happens.
Do you think with Zurgo unbanned, Kellan will still see any play?
It's a good question, and we were wondering about that. The problem is Zurgo is usually a better card if you have an opponent that can reliably, well, it's quite hard to say, who relies on
Reliably,
yeah, it's quite hard to say. Well, you get my point. Who rely on creatures with 1 point of attack and 3 points of endurance, for example, like Thrasios or things like that. And so, in this specific case, it's always pretty better to play Zurgo. But in most of the cases, Kellan is just a better card overall. And it's especially since the second cast of the Kellan is way better than the second cast of Zurgo. But On the other hand, when you're playing against control, the second cast of Zurgo may be useful with the dash opportunity. So, in my opinion, it may not totally suppress one another. It may just be different matchups. So another tool to the toolbox, like we said.
And also maybe just following slightly different strategies, right? Because
Yeah,
I think the Kellen lists are still very packed with creatures, while
yeah, I
at least
agree.
back then people preferred to play the burn strategy with Zurgo. I'm honestly not sure if that's still a valid strategy in 2025, but
Yeah, absolutely agree.
we will. I'm pretty sure we will see people experimenting with it.
Yeah, the fact you're absolutely right. The fact that Kellan is just a better use for excess mana, so you're better having a heavier mana curve, because you can use the mana more efficiently. While Zurgo is a more classical burn, where excess mana is not really useful.
Yeah,
So it may be very different build in the end.
True.
We'll see what happens.
I'm curious about that one. I think this is one of the. I think both changes are interesting. And coming to the second change, it's Hogaak, which is
Being unbanned.
unbanned in the 99. We have to say that. It's
Yeah.
not unbanned as a commander. We all experienced the era of Hogaak. There is more and more support, or there was more and more support for the commander back then, which finally led to a ban. And back then, this decision was made that it's also excluded from the 99. I think the deck back then that used it the most was Grist. So it's an interesting change right now. I think the creature can still be quite dangerous. We have Slimefoot these days. Slimefoot could make use of Hogaak. Grist will probably come back. I will, or at least I would expect that. So what was the thought behind that?
Talked about Hogaak, that the green was the color was less played in the format. Like we have the start and it was like 6 or 7%. When blue was like 20% on white too. So we know we thought that we need to do something to increase the power of the green deck, and I think Hogaak was a card that can shine in this thing, and it was like when we saw the ban list, that was why we want to play green in this format, and Hogaak was one of the most interesting pieces because it's iconic. I think it's an iconic card of Magic that is playing was playing Legacy and was great. And also that's Hogaak met what we want to do with greens, like new command zone, like all command zone, like Grist, like Baby Grist 2, like Teval right now, like maybe Glad with more creature. That's all new green command zone that works with Graveyard and can give fuel to make Hogaak works. So I think it's really interesting in different command zone, and then that it's a card that brings back green on the top of the scene. Also, Slimefoot right now, it's with Azusa, Slimefoot is the green deck that is the most played, and I think about like Hogaak and Azusa, you can play it in his deck, but in Slimefoot that will be not great as in Grist or Teval, I think, because Slimefoot can play Hogaak one time, but we didn't think that he has the resource to play it 2 or 3 times. So with the unban of Hogaak, we brings back all green decks that don't see any play right now. It's like more slow mid-range deck. And I think it's really interesting in the format to see this deck back.
Yeah, I think the reasoning definitely makes sense. I personally like the card. I think I never thought it was too crazy in the 99, but back then I think the reasoning was that control is tackled too much by Hogaak, even in the 99, especially with the dominance of decks like Grist. I think it was the most prominent back then. But yeah, you made a good point. There is Glarb these days. Glarb could also make use of it. Teval, the new dragon, the Sultai dragon, can also play it. I'm excited for this change, to be fair.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
and
think
also the old control decks was very different at right now. Right now,
Right.
control decks, it's Atraxa with Dreamholes, it's Idetsugu Carry, it's Ertai, or it's control deck that has combo pieces. So they can maybe just inner again inner the Hogaak and kill with it on the board. So I think Hogaak don't put so much pressure than before on a control deck.
I think Hogaak has a very interesting ban history because it was legal for a long time, and the deck just kept getting more additions. Where I think when it first kind of was printed, there was a lot fewer cards that like in the
Yeah.
Golgari pile that put like 4 cards in your graveyard. So it was much harder to cast initially, and then it got better, and then it got banned as a commander. I think like it was at least a year after it got printed, if I remember correctly, because Urza was banned very quickly after it was printed, and they were printed in the same set. And I remember playing against Hogaak at many tournaments, and then eventually, I think one of the main strengths was the Buried Alive pile with it, right? Where you got Stinkweed Imp and Hogaak and something else, and then you just
That was
basically have
the very old build, I think. And then like
Uh,
with more sets, it's got better and better. And but
Yeah.
it's definitely true
Yeah,
that the
true.
Commander was banned, or was it banned in the first in the same turn? I'm not exactly sure, to be fair, but because it's
yeah,
quite some time
it was
ago.
banned on the same turn
Okay.
with the Ada, and because there is Grist also in the format, and Grist a bit disappear at this time with the ban of Hogaak, and Ruffin begins to dominate the format because he lost his biggest contender with Hogaak and Grist at the same
Yeah.
time.
So I think something that hasn't been mentioned yet, and if I remember correctly, are both of them experimental unbans? And could you talk a little bit about the concept of an experimental unban at the moment? I think the last time it happened
Yeah.
was it Teferi or was it Edric?
Edric, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe Teferi, I'm not sure, but I think it was Edric.
I think Teferi
Well,
was more or less a safe unban, yeah. So
Yeah.
not an experimental one, yeah.
Well, experimental is actually pretty simple. It just means it's a card that's complex to assess, and we are not absolutely sure of the impact, but we are confident enough to unban it, in the sense that we think it would be better for the format to increase the diversity, to enhance some archetypes, etc. But it may still have some consequences we did not foresee, and so we just mention it's experimental in the sense that we are confident, but it may have unexpected results. It's just it's a precaution. The thing is, if we do not talk about it again, it's just considered to be unbanned classically. It's indefinitely. But it just means maybe in a few announcements, in a few ban lists, we could go back on this decision. That's just what it means. Hogaak is quite difficult to assess in the end because it's a unique card in the 99, but it's also a structural card. Since it's the kind of card you'll get to tutor easily and you'll get to build around. So it may improve certain archetypes, but it may also be the center of some decks. And we talked about Grist, and Grist, it's the kind of deck that could really profit from the card, and maybe it's a build around for him. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the return of Grist. That's
know.
and it's probably
Me
only
too.
the floor of this card, to be fair. I
Yeah,
do
true,
see it in
true.
Glarb and Teval and stuff like this too.
I
Yeah,
agree.
excited for that one.
Same.
All right. So those are the changes for today. And we would like to talk about 2 more cards. And I think the first one we should talk about is a relatively new card from a secret layer, which is Deadpool. A card that has not been touched. But maybe I will pass the torch over to Samuel because you have even more thoughts than I regarding this card.
Yeah, I think, to put it bluntly, from my experience, not banning Deadpool here is a mistake. I think we will see how that pans out. Last time I was, although having misread Ketramos, I was very excited about Ketramos, and it has not materialized to be a very strong deck. But in the kind of case of Deadpool, I think we've already seen Deadpool catch up to the strongest players in the format. On in terms of top 8 statistics, and just out of a gameplay perspective, I feel like it's a very toxic card because it kind of changes the pace of the game around it, where after turn 4 or turn 3, there are situations with Simian Spirit Guide and City of Traitors and things like that, where it gets cast even faster. But when you're playing against Deadpool, you always have to be aware of the opponent being able to cast Deadpool and have to kind of slow roll your strong creatures and be very scared of it coming down. And it can tempo you by having you keep 3 mana open to sacrifice the creature if it gets text box swapped. So there's a lot of toxic elements to the card that other commanders don't have, where you expect it at some point in the curve, but you can kind of play around it to an extent. And not playing the game by not casting your good creatures is, in my opinion, not a great way to kind of affect the pace of the board. It's a very powerful card, and I think in the 99 it also has some very powerful lines in decks like Slimefoot. But I think as a commander, I don't like playing against it, which I don't have with other commanders. Whatever I'm playing, I always think, okay, I'm playing against this deck. I can sculpt my hand around it. I can kind of think about how the opponent is going to play their game. But the issue with the Deadpool plan is, if you're not playing your good creatures, you're probably not winning the game either. And the Deadpool deck just gets to play its entire game plan without ever casting its commander, and it still has an enormous effect on the board. So that's kind of my subjective opinion about the card, and I understand the perspective of not having tested it enough. But is no change to Deadpool, how do you see it? Is it we'll see how it goes for another 2 months, or is it we think this card is fine?
I will rebound about the fact that you said that, with Deadpool, you can play the best card that is in your hand, the best creature that is in your hand, and it's a bit frustrating, but I think that's not awful that you can play the best card in your deck. That's playing Magic. Yeah, when you play Magic, you can play always a linear plan, just play a card when there is in Surbrillance, and yeah, you need to think about the card you play and how it will be impact the game that the card you play. So I think it's a bit interesting that, okay, Deadpool, with that card, you need to think differently than before. And this thing, I think it's interesting for the game, but there is maybe a problem with that. That's the card put too much pressure on the game. And that is the other side of the impact of Deadpool. And this side is maybe too important, but we didn't know right now. Also about Deadpool, that if the opponent don't play his best card, but you have you have a command zone that you can play. So against bad control deck or combo deck like Hogaak Tevesh, like Atraxa, like Idetsugu Carry, it's important in this matchup to be proactive, and it is the first of the commander of the command zone that you have cards to play always. And with Deadpool again in this matchup, but you don't really can play your command zone. You are a bit locked with it in your command zone. So the card can be great in some matchup when the people play great creature and you want to steal, but they can be also a bit really weak against this deck when Hogaak Tevesh who don't play creature, Elminster who don't play creature, Atraxa or Idetsugu Carry that will not play creature in your Deadpool. So it's a bit weird because, and it's also a command zone who costs 4 mana and don't play green, don't play blue to protect it, and just can protect it with red blast or prairie blast or some discard. So it's less good. And so I think the card is impressive because its effect is really strong and can steal a game, but your opponent know that the Deadpool has this effect and can play around it, I think. And what I saw a lot in the different video of Deadpool, that people play TNN and opponent play Deadpool and wins the game on the spot. But okay, if you play against this card, you need to think the game differently. And right now, I think the people are not ready to play this game and think about that. And so we need to have more time, I think, to have more time to see what's happened. And maybe in 2 months we thought that okay, Deadpool is too strong and Deadpool need to go. But right now, I think people need to prepare to play against this card and need to test and it's and know the good line of the gameplay of the game. People has to know how they need to play against this card, I think, and it's a really weird card, so it takes time.
Okay, just to kind of respond to that directly, I think creatureless decks like Atraxa, which still plays a couple of creatures, or Hidetsugu and Kairi, which plays barely any creatures, and Elminster, that's maybe like 10% of the format. If like on the very high end, that's maybe 10% of the format. Every other deck plays creatures and plays a lot of them and plays a lot of good creatures. Like, sure, playing a True Name Nemesis without a counterspell open against a Hogaak, against a Deadpool deck is a very bad line. On the other hand, True Name Nemesis is not like it's a good creature, but it doesn't make it into a lot of decks anymore. Most creatures that are being played are better than True Name Nemesis and have very strong enters the battlefield triggers or very strong combat stats. And like the kind of the playing around Deadpool is basically just not playing any good creatures, which is what most decks play, in my opinion. But yeah, I think I can leave it at that.
You also can play a creature and have a removal for Deadpool, and okay, Deadpool make 2 for 1, but you don't play your best creature into Deadpool, and you add removal or something like this. Like a deck like Flash, there's a deck who play lots of creature, but Flash is the card that answers really well to this Deadpool. And it's the third deck of the format. I think Yoshimaru can have card that works well against Deadpool, because they will play Yoshimaru, Trace, Little Trace, and the Deadpool player has to play its Deadpool against minor threats about it, and you play your third draft after. So you can play around it, but I think you can play around it. Maybe I didn't play with it, but that's the feeling that I have about the card right now, and we'll see in a few months if it was okay or if not. I guess.
One more comment on removing Deadpool. That's not a 2-for-1. It's a 3/4-for-1. If the creature entering the battlefield has a trigger, that grants you a card, which a lot of cards do nowadays, or it gets you kind of up one card. You then also have to sacrifice the creature that bolts you every turn, drawing Deadpool another card. So you've sacrificed the creature in play, drawn the opponent a card, removed Deadpool, which cost you a card, and possibly had it enter the battlefield trigger. So it's a 3/4-for-1. So yeah, just putting that out there.
Flavian, what's your opinion on Deadpool?
It's actually a card on which I have no strong opinion. I'm mostly neutral. I see the power, I see the potential of the card, but right now I'm still in the position of saying it's not very interesting to play against, that's for sure. But it's still a 4-drop in a color combination that's not that good. So, well, it's typically one of those times where I have no strong opinion and I'm just waiting to have more experience and more feedback from the player.
Okay. Yeah, interesting is a nice way to put it.
Yeah. I would be lying if I said I have any strong opinion on this.
Yeah, fine.
I'm just waiting for more feedback.
Okay. Well, I've said my piece about Deadpool. One more card that is definitely I would say a strong contender to be banned. It's banned in a lot of other formats, or at least it's banned in Modern, and it has very strong play patterns. It has a lot of synergy with many cards in its kind of color combinations and decks. It's Fury, very strong in Slimefoot, very strong in many other strategies. What's the committee's current, or your guys' current position on Slimefoot? Is it too strong? Is it not a ban-worthy competitor? It represents a lot of a very strong tempo advantage, which is, I would say, one of the biggest factors in Duel Commander at the moment.
You're talking about Fury, is it?
Fury, yeah.
Okay, wait, yeah, I think you said Slimefoot.
Yeah, because Fury is mostly played in Slimefoot and abused, quote unquote, abused the best way in Slimefoot. But it's also, I just want to add, there's this constant debate about Aragon. We talked about that in the previous session too, and this could also be a way to nerf Aragon a bit more. I'm personally a bit undecided regarding Fury. I've heard a lot of criticism regarding this card, and I think it might have been debated in the past. So yeah, we just wanted to know your opinion on that.
Maybe I'll start, since on this one I have more of a strong opinion. And if you're asking about personal position, I'm all for it. Ban Fury. Mostly for the reasons you already said most of them, but the first one is absolutely the huge tempo advantage it gives in a format that's driven by creatures, and it's going to be even more driven by creatures. And the second one is, just as you said, some decks, especially Slimefoot, can abuse the card by tutoring it very easily to have some kind of recursion on it. Well, this problem is quite mitigated by the ban of reanimation, but still, I think the problem still exists. Well, and to counter my own argument for the sake of a discussion, I would say that in the end, Slimefoot is not that good of a deck right now. So maybe it's already shooting. I was using another idiom. I'm not sure if it exists in English. In France, we say shooting the ambulance. To say.
That's
Um,
a funny
putting,
idiom.
Samuel
I,
is
Yeah,
I
the
think I understand what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, putting down somebody or something that's already quite down on the floor, and you're shooting it down again. So yeah, shooting the ambulance, quite literally. But well, in any case, I do agree that the card is giving too much of a tempo advantage, and I think it's the kind of cards that enhance or permits bad patterns. Some stuff like I cannot play around it since my opponent may have it or he may not, but I have no real way to know. And since I cannot know, I just have to play thinking he does not have it. And in the end, if I'm punished, I may be punished for a good decision. And that's the kind of pattern I absolutely dislike in the game.
And the thing about Fury also, that we talk a bit about Fury, and we talk also with Pyrokinesis. So I think the two cards are bound. Linked. Yeah. These two cards are linked because we can reanimate Fury, but the most problem the cat, it's not his redundant, but more his first effect and his tempo effect. And so the question was, okay, does we want to ban Fury and Pyrokinesis, or does we want ban only Fury or nothing? And the fact also that the Fury is great. The game where Fury is better, it's against another Fury deck. And also Fury, it's onwards. So we are a bit afraid of, okay, we ban Fury right now, but there is Yoshima, which is a great deck right now, and if we ban it, will be Yoshima too strong also, or Slimefoot. If we ban Fury, will be Slimefoot too strong. So I think we think that the card Fury, shot for themselves, it's
It speaks for
also
itself.
a way.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, to keep the Fury deck in a cage.
In check. Yeah.
And so in check, yeah.
Yeah, I get your point.
So,
I think I would personally. I see your comparison between Pyrokinesis and Fury. So we all know that Fury is way better. Yeah, like you see a bunch of red decks, even 3 or 4 color decks, that despite having not that many pitches, Fury is most often added because it's still a creature for 5 with double strike. Still a very powerful card, right? Even if you don't cast it for free. While Pyrokinesis is a card that you really have to think about whether or not to include it. But yeah, I get the point. I mean, maybe it's the necessary evil to keep it alive. Maybe this is also just a natural evolution of magic, so to say. Because if we start banning pyrokinesis, then maybe some people come around with how about banning Solitude too? And like then we have to tackle all the good free spells spell by spell, or at least like debate about it. And at some point this might be a bit too much. Because in the near future, I don't think that Wizards will stop printing those cards. We had the set of flares, which were fine, I think, come with a reasonable cost, but still, free magic. Either way is getting more and more in Magic, and we can't, somehow we have to deal with that. And by the way, just to add, because Crimelune or Flavian, you said earlier that Reanimate was banned, and it nerfed the interactions with Fury quite a bit. I agree to that.
Yeah.
Then again, the decks, especially like all the black decks that would apology. There we go. All the black decks that played Reanimate back then, some of them, not all, started to include Animate Dead instead, just because
Yeah.
they realized like tempo-wise, this is still a good play. Of course, it's an enchantment, and you can get rid of it and get rid of the creature, but it's still there, even in decks that don't have like Reanimator as their main strategy. And also, I mean, that's due to the reason that there are not that many Rakdos Reanimator strategies around. But I think this would be the case. We would see this much more often too, outside of Slamfoot. What did you want to say, Samuel?
Yeah, just wanted to kind of, if we were ranking cards, I think Fury would be an S tier card, and Pyrokinesis would be like a B tier card at best. And there's a lot of aspects that kind of
Yeah, I
change
agree. I
that
agree with that.
that like are in between those cards that really change their power level. And I think a conversation about banning Fury does not at all need to include considering Pyrokinesis to be banned.
Yeah, I'm on the same line actually. The main difference, well, you just said most of the stuff, but the fact that Fury is a good card by itself, it's never a dead card. It's always useful even if the bad matchups. Whereas Pyrokinesis is very specific. Where I do agree with Nicolas is that it's both very bad gaming experience, since it does have the same problem of I cannot play around it, and I have the problem that if my opponent have it, it's just okay, he have it. I cannot anticipate the card. So yeah, that's the same problem. But the impact on the game, and mostly the impact on the scale of a tournament, it's just not the same. You may lose a game or two, but it comes with a cost, just as you said. It's a card you have to build around, and you have to anticipate the fact that it would be good only in certain kind of matchups, whereas Fury is just a go-to. And last but not least, Fury is a very tutorable card. It's a creature. It's just a creature. You can tutor it with a lot of tools, whereas Pyrokinesis is just an instant.
And
So,
one more
yeah,
thing
I
we
do
did
agree
not
with that with you.
mention is the
Yeah.
fact that we can also target planeswalkers, which is more
Yeah,
often than
true,
not
true.
relevant, right?
True.
Often forgotten.
That's one
but
of the stuff. That's one of the things where I say it's good in every matchup. Yeah,
absolutely,
you're absolutely right. The setup where your opponent plays control, he full taps to play some kind of planeswalker, kill your creature, and you can just go back in the game by playing your own Fury, killing the planeswalker, and having a powerful threat. So yeah, it's a command pattern that can be very, very powerful. But
Definitely.
I would argue it's not a problematic pattern. It's actually quite an interesting pattern to get back in the game where playing against control and having ways to kill the planeswalker while developing your board. It's an okay pattern. It is even an interesting one because it negates the dilemma that planeswalker imposes on the game most of the time by attacking it or attacking the player. But
That is
it's
true, yeah.
not. It's not the pattern, this specific pattern. It's the fact that it can offer this pattern while being absolutely insane in the creature matchup.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, fully agreed.
Okay. Maybe
I think
now that we talked about a couple of cards, so I'll just say it again. If there's any card that you miss now, please go back to our previous videos. We talked about Nadu, Parallax Wave, Demonic Tutor, Force of Will, whatever comes in mind. We covered all those cards in the latest sessions. So just head over to those and check them out. As a closer, I would like to talk about a card from an upcoming set, which is Vivi. I have no idea about the Final Fantasy universe. However,
Yes.
this seems to be quite a powerful new Izzet commander. not only
Yep.
in CDH, also in our format, I would say. What are your thoughts on this card? Maybe some speculation? Which direction would you go for a build? What do you think? Have you at all thought about this card, or maybe you see it for the first time? I doubt it, but what are your opinions on that?
Well, I start. It's obviously a very interesting design. That's for sure. The design is really interesting. It's interestingly costed, since I'm not sure it could be too powerful just because of the costing and the endurance, the toughness. But the design is very interesting. The problem we have with AZ in this format is it's not that good of a control color, since the removals aren't that good and the toolbox of counter spells is quite lacking, and you cannot deal with certain kinds of permanence. So the inherent problems with the color makes me think it will not be a very hard control, but maybe something in between mid-rangey, with a few unfair plays, like some kind of weird blue moon deck. That's my intuition on this topic. But I'm actually not sure of what we have to do with this kind of card. It's an interesting design.
Nicolas, how about you?
Yeah, I find it's a good card. That's for sure. But it's a good card in the bad color of Magic, like a bad color pad of Magic. So it's a bit weird, huh? And we saw that blue red deck was broken or just bad. So it's make me a bit afraid of it, because that can be Ares or Barwell and Karizev, and there is not a lot of between two with this color pair. So we'll see how this deck will be burned, and I think that people we want to play a lot of moon in Teens deck, and I see a blue moon deck maybe, and play a good command zone. I want to cheese game with this plan, or then can be a stasis or something like this. So it will be interesting, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think the history of is it combo decks, if we expect this to go more in a combo direction in Duel Commander, is quite interesting. I remember back then during COVID lockdown, there was Riel played online in tournaments. Back then, MTGO was not available yet, or Duel Commander was not available on MTGO that way. And then we played on Cockatrice. Now there was Ral coming with the latest Modern Horizons set, right? A card that was debated a little too due to the spell reduction or the mana cost reduction. I've personally tried Ral in a high tide fashion. It was very fun to play the deck. It was difficult to play the deck correctly, and after all, it didn't feel too powerful. However, I think this card is much better. But I'm personally also, I think you could go in a more controlish way, maybe, since like the trigger is not limited and you always deal the damage, which means your commander brings a bunch of mana, even if it's only in your turn. But that could help you cast bigger spells, and then you can also find more counter spells to protect your threat and stuff. So I'm very curious about what people will bring up with this commander.
The most important question about this about the build, it's what you want to do with this bunch of mana, in fact.
Exactly.
Because okay, you can play Stormscale Scion or Elemental Eruption in your deck, but if you don't have Vivi on the board, that will be that card, and maybe you just want to play a Stock Up or Memory Deluge or something like this with the mana, because the card will be useful even if Vivi is not on the board and if you can't protect your commander. And yeah, that will be the biggest question. And so I don't really think about a control deck, a pure control deck, because I don't think so. I don't think you can win in the late game without cheese blend in a blue-red deck, because you can deal with enchantment, you deal badly with artifacts, even with planeswalker, so it will be really really weird, and you don't have a good removal spell mostly. So if your opponent play a creature with 5 darkness, it will be the end of the world for you. So it's really very bad, really weird spot, I think. So I think you want to play cheese blend, and the best way of cheesing in Duel Commander, it's with the mana, because the mana bars are really weak in Duel Commander, and so it's the way that you want to play. And I think you will play Blood Moon, Winter Orb, Stasis, card like this to win. And like Flavian said, I think this deck will play like mid-range threats like Abundant Oculus, Pyroglyph, or things like this, or Multi-Regent. So because blue-reds need to kill, and needs to win the game.
I see your point. Then again, the more creatures you add in order to win the game, you dilute the ability to make use of the trigger, right? But I think the trigger is only really interesting if you would go like in a straight storm direction. That's definitely interesting to see. Currently, we have Rograk Tevesh being a popular storm variant, aside from Rograk Silas with the blue edition. So this will maybe revive some storm aficionados to brew with their favorite archetype again.
Yeah. But there's still Itad in the format, so you can play an Itad deck.
Yeah, true.
But the question with Itad, that's you want to have Itad and Breach to work this thing, but you don't really want to play Brand Phase, I guess. So it's a bit weird. And
Temporal Fissure. Maybe you maybe that's your finish. Yeah, it's not the best I know, but
so it's a bit weird. And an Itad deck will play Moon and Stasis, because you will be a deck who needs quantity, because if you want to play Storm, and with that, if you play like card like Moon, like Stasis, like Winterbob, or even card like Curiosity or Sigil of Sleep or Ophidian Eye, I see in the many deck right now. But this card that don't work with Storm or with the combo, and it's card with off plan. So there can be a problem of stability, also of consistency, also. So we'll see what people brings.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think very fruitful discussion. I think this it seems like a card that doesn't have any inherent design flaws, where you can only activate it during your turn, and it doesn't draw you any cards. It just deals 1 damage per spell. It costs 3 mana. It has 3 toughness. There's a lot of angles that it is not that incredible on. It's a very cool commander, but we'll see how people build it. Yeah,
I'm curious to test that guy. We'll
definitely.
see.
I think that was a very fruitful discussion. Thank the both of you for coming on and talking about the changes and possible changes, and we will see what the future holds for us.
Yeah, I think the next update will be quite interesting regarding the fact that we will have a new meta game with a new commander being available. We have Hogaak in 99. I think this will bring some changes. I think in beginning of July there is the French Championship, right? So this will be a big event with all the changes. Apart from and also in 2 weeks, I think there's the Chess Championship. Last year this was their biggest tournament. This year might be even bigger. So interesting. What's coming?
Yeah, and there will be a lot of place to build new decks So
Yes.
I think it's really great in Duel Commander with because we talk about Vivi, but there is also other cat who comes from Final Fantasy, a lot
Absolutely.
of legendary cat,
Yeah,
like
true.
Sephiroth, for example. And so there is a lot of people, a lot of energy. I think will be spent on deck building, and I think it's really interesting for the
I think so
formats.
too. It feels like the set consists of almost only legendary creatures. Like whenever you check
Yeah,
the
like
spoilers,
I don't know, 150 legends or something.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
many, you have to read them all, and most of them are shit. But there's going to be a couple of diamonds in the rough.
That's right.
Yeah.
For example, the new Tifa is also something that I'm a bit excited about. Like in a way that whether or not it could bring back mono green aggro. You know,
Yeah, I
like
remember there being a couple of very scary bristly build turns, and
Exactly,
this
yeah.
card is, when built around correctly, I think probably much more scary than Bristly Bill having trample on its own. If you fetch and generate other ways of other land drops in a turn, you play a giant growth on it, suddenly Tifa's attacking for 32. And if you have the mana to give her hexproof or something, or protection, then suddenly you've got a very potent threat in mono green kind of out of nowhere. So yeah, lots of interesting commanders coming up. Do we have any closing thoughts?
Not from my
Good.
side. If you haven't anything else to add, I will thank you again for being with us, and I hope to chat with you again on the next update. As I said, it will definitely be interesting, I think,
Yeah, of course.
regarding all the tournament results and how the changes now impact the future metagame and also the new legendaries and whatsoever. So with that being said, thank you very much for being our guest today. Thanks for tuning in to the viewers. Next time we'll be live again. And if you have nothing else to add, we will close it here and say goodbye. We'll see you in the next session.
Thanks.
Thanks.
And thanks for
Thank
having
you.
us,
Bye.
as usual.
Yes. Bye bye.
Thanks for
Bye.
watching, and see you next time.